Welcome to the first part of our 2 episode series, Why You're Poor 15 Habits Rich People Avoid. In today's episode, we'll dive into the habits that could be holding you back from building wealth. These aren't just quick tips, but long term mindset shifts that the wealthy embrace and that can truly change your financial future. Are you ready to uncover what's stopping you from reaching financial success? Well, stick around then, because we're about to break down the first half of these habits that could be sabotaging your progress.
Wow, that was a hook if I have ever heard one, Ben. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Quite the exciting intro there from Ben. I am already very intrigued on what we're going to cover today.
Yep.
Ben's been actually hard at work on his YouTube channel, preparing a ton of really valuable content for you guys. And this episode today is a 2-part series, so it'll actually be this week as well as next week. And we're going to be diving deep into these 15 very unique, but also very important, again, traits that the wealthy have that the poor do not. So, Ben, I'm really excited to have you kind of dig deep on all 15 of these with us today.
I'm so excited. As you know, I love this stuff. And there are so many things here that a lot of us may recognize, but we don't understand how important they actually are.
Mm-hmm.
So, all 15 are extremely important. Very excited to go through 1 through 8 today.
Yeah, man, let's just jump right into it. I know the audience is also excited to hear what we have in store today. So let's just jump right into habit number 1.
All right, well, here is habit number 1. This is a big one. The rich focus on long-term goals versus the poor who focus on short-term gratification. The wealthy plan for the future and they do everything today based off of what it's going to do for them years down the road. For example, when it comes to money, I was having a conversation with my brother, and he was sharing a story about a friend of his who came into a little money, nothing outrageous, but it was like $10,000 or $20,000. And we were just talking about how someone who has a poor mindset is going to look at that $20,000 and think to themselves, what can I do right now today with that 20,000? What can I go spend that on? Whereas someone who has a rich mindset is going to look at that and say, you know what, this $20,000 right here, this is really $3 million 30 years from now. And that's the difference. The wealthy are looking at things years and decades down the road versus the poor who are looking at things in terms of what can this do for me today.
Yeah, the first thing I think of is the phrase, burning a hole in your pocket, like just get some money, it's burning a hole in your pocket. How quickly can you spend it and, get it out of your pocket? And I've been guilty of that too. And I think, pretty much everybody that's probably listening today has also, and it's part of life, but having that discipline and that just ability to say no is something that definitely I think grows over time and maybe something that you just kind of mature, as you get older and maybe make a few mistakes along the way and realize, maybe some dumb purchases you made in the past and don't do that again. But definitely, I think a very simple but very difficult for a lot of people point here.
Yeah, and the reason it's difficult is because our economy is based off of debt. You think of the federal government, we have record debt. 70% of the United States economy, though, is based off of consumer spending. Well, when you think back to the 1960s, credit cards didn't really exist. They were just starting to come out. And that is what has been a major spur in our economy as far as what has really pushed growth over the last 3 or 4 decades is the access to credit. So installment loans, which are auto loans, credit cards, in-store charge cards. 40, 50 years ago, the consumer didn't have this. So we're literally pushing this stuff onto the consumer so they can then go spend and then grow the economy. But it's at the expense of the consumer. 79% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck or have less than $2,000 saved in an emergency fund. And until you start looking at things differently, planning and getting intentional with your budget and your money, that's not going to change.
It's pretty much impossible in today's, just environment. But I think something that I always was impressed with as far as just at least a concept is, rather than using like a credit card, if you physically have, let's just say you have $1,000, rather than having a piece of plastic in your wallet, physically having $1,000 in bills in your wallet, just that tangible aspect of the physical money and just how much more difficult it is to give that money away and pay for things versus just the swipe of a card. So, and obviously the credit card companies realize that, and that's why they're so successful. But it's hard
Yeah.
to
Well,
do
in
that
your
nowadays.
case, you're going to open your briefcase off of your bed, and you got the stacks of hundreds, and you're just going to grab like a stack, and it's like now there's like one less stack there,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I've heard of that too before, and when you're physically handing the dollar bills and the money over to someone, it definitely does give you a different perspective versus charging type in your credit card number. And a lot of these places now, like Amazon, some of these other places, you don't even have to do that because your credit
Mhm.
card's saved. All you have to do is click buy. And that's a lot easier than, reaching into your wallet or your cash savings and actually handing over the cash money.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into the number two. What's the second one on the list today?
All right. Number two is another big one. And this is something that is very personal to me for two different reasons. Habit number two: the rich invest in self education versus the poor who rely on formal education only.
Love it.
And the
Oh,
reason this is so personal for me is because, when I graduated from college, at the time where I was at with my mindset, I was so glad to be done with school. I never wanted to read another book. I never wanted to take another test. I never wanted to do anything education based ever again. And this was when I graduated from school. I was a college graduate. That was my mindset. And that's actually a very poor mindset because I went and paid all this money to go get a degree, but then my attitude was such that I didn't, I wasn't interested in learning. And so the rich are going to be those who are self-taught. They're continuous learners. It doesn't mean that they don't do formal education and they don't go to, higher education, but what it does mean is that they are continuous learners with everything that they do, whereas someone who has a poor mindset really focuses on the higher education, the formal education piece. And guess what? Guess what? Higher education, college, the formal education piece, the cost for that is record highs. Student
mhm.
loan debt is out of control. And so that is where we need to restart thinking a lot of this stuff. The rich are actually like having these conversations with their family. And I'm doing that too with my kids. I'm not pushing college on my kids. The message that I'm trying to get across to them is college doesn't make you a success or failure. And if you want to go to college and you think that's the right path for you, then let's have that conversation. Let's talk about it. But going to college and the act of getting a degree does not mean that you're successful, and it does not mean or not having that doesn't mean you're a failure. Kind of like previous generations have pushed onto us.
And I think about, myself, a little personal story of, I graduated from CU, as did you, but with a marketing degree. And the way that the world is nowadays, how quickly things are changing. Technology is just making everything 10 times faster. Where, for example, me with marketing, what I learned in college, obviously it was 20 plus years ago at this point, but even people that are, 5 years out of college, the strategies, what's working, what's being done right now is totally different from even a couple years ago. Where if you're not embracing the self-education piece and continuing to get yourself, educated and updated on whatever it is that you're passionate about, if you're not continuing the education, you're going to be left in the dust, and you're going to be, doing things that just aren't even relevant or productive at this point. So it's really being able to stay with, the content, continuous learning to stay up with the times is something that
Yeah.
I always think about.
And so, for some of our listeners out there, for you, speaking from your experience, what are some of the ways? Because I know that you go to seminars, you've traveled all over the United States going to, personal development, real estate seminars, you read books, you listen to podcasts. What's the most impactful, or is it just kind of everything? Are you learning from all of those different platforms?
Yeah, I think everybody's different. You just have to find what way you absorb knowledge and actually, absorb it in a way that you can apply it practically is what's most important. So if that's for some people reading, great. If for other people it's, live events, great. If for some people it's just watching videos on YouTube, there's a ton of different ways in today's world to get education. And I would also say that a lot of it can be found for free rather than paying $1,000 or $97 for the latest course. in reality, if you just go out and look for that same information on your own, especially with new things out today like ChatGPT and just other AI type tools, you could probably find 90% of what's being taught in those paid courses for free. And then
Yeah.
the only other thing I would just add to that I've noticed a lot with the live events and just people that always are going to the next event, really focused on this, learning, is don't become what I use the term a wantapreneur. So instead of an entrepreneur, a wantapreneur is somebody that just always is attending the events, always listening to the latest podcasts, watching the latest YouTube videos, yet they're never taking action.
Yeah.
I would say if you're somebody that's
Yeah.
passionate about, going out and trying to do something on your own as an entrepreneur, yeah, you're going to want to have some self-education and be prepared to make sure you're making the proper, decisions, but don't just be on the sidelines for so long, because the real education comes from failure. And the only way you're going to be able to
Yeah.
do that is by actually taking action and just realizing that failure is good, because that just means you're one step closer to success and you're just learning along the way.
You have to go fail, and that's why most people never get to be successful, is because they're not willing to go fail. One of my favorite entrepreneurs of all time is Sarah Blakely, the founder of
Mm-hmm.
Spanx. And I don't know if you are familiar with her story, but she's now a billionaire, and she started Spanx. And when she was a kid growing up, her dad used to ask her, "What did you do? How did you fail today?" And so he wouldn't come, like, he wouldn't ask her, "What were your wins? What did you do today to make me proud?" He was asking her every night, and her siblings, "How did you fail? What did you do to, like, how are you a failure today?" And they would go around and sharing how they all failed. And what she learned from that is he literally taught her to embrace failure, that to have success, you have to be able to overcome. And I always remind myself that it's not, it doesn't matter what you do and where you're at, either personally, professionally, with your money, there are going to be challenges. There's going to be adversity. But if you stay with it, if you stay on plan, stay on mission, and you don't give up, you can't lose. You're not going to lose. Now, one other quick follow-up question here, because I know that we want to move on to point number 3. But what would your advice be? Because this is also something that's been really, you hear a lot of people say, "Well, I want to go back to school. I'm thinking about going back to school to get my master's. I need to go back to school." What would you say to that person?
I would ask first what industry they're in. If they're in a couple very niche type industries like medical or maybe in engineering, then go for it. You need that to be competitive against other people that you're probably trying to get the job up against. And you need that knowledge probably just to do the job that you're trying to get to. But outside of that, I would just really take a second look at, weighing the cost versus the benefit of doing so. And I've just had a lot of friends and just people that I've known over the last, 10, 15 years after graduating from our main 4-year degrees, just really seeing a lot of people, I think, put themselves maybe in a deeper hole financially
Mm,
rather than just getting a job and hopefully getting the real life experience from that job. I don't know. The only other thing I would say is just there is, I think, so much more value into whatever job you have, truly giving it 100%. I don't care if you're flipping burgers at Burger King or, mowing the lawn. If you're doing your job perfectly and really taking pride in that, other opportunities are going to come your way and you're going to be able to find ways
yeah.
to accelerate yourself to that next level. I don't care what industry it's in. So rather than, every 2 minutes having squirrel syndrome where you're going over to one side, then you're going somewhere else, just
Hmm.
being able to stay consistent with whatever you're doing an excellent job at whatever it is. And then hopefully by doing so, you're going to have opportunities just naturally present themselves to you and hopefully be able to do that free without having to pay for additional schooling. Or you're doing
Yeah.
such a great job to get somebody else to pay for it for you.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice, and I feel the same way. And I always, when people ask me these questions, I always say that my job, my role is to not give you the answers, is to make sure that you are asking the right questions for yourself.
I
Now,
like that.
there may be a situation where going back to school and paying for it, if it is going to give you more opportunities and it's going to allow you to increase your income, and you know that the increase in pay is going to pay for the degree. But at the same time, though, a lot of times you're going to have to reduce your hours at work. You're going to have to take some time off to focus on the education. There's going to be significant cost involved, possibly tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And are you just better off putting all of your time and energy and going all in, kind of like what you were just saying a minute ago, versus, and learning with people that are actually doing on YouTube and having different real life mentors. There's so many resources out there that we all have the ability to access, and we need to start thinking, how can we leverage these resources more and more. And I know that's one reason that we're doing this podcast. We want to be part of that. We want to be a resource to people.
Yep, absolutely. Let's jump into the third one.
All right, habit number 3: the rich create multiple income streams versus the poor who rely on a single source of income. Agree or disagree?
10% agree, with the one exception of you are a person that has a very, very, very high, income day job. If you're a doctor or something that is very high level of just stress and it really is taking all of your energy, there might be some scenarios where that's kind of your full bandwidth, but I would argue even in those situations, you still probably have, because you have so much active income, the ability to diversify that and put it into rental properties or other
Mm-hmm.
income streams. I think really there's no excuse here. I'd say the challenge for people that don't have a very high active income, or even somebody like myself that's, kind of getting kind of some traction on a new career path where it's 100% commission, it's a sales type job where you don't have that consistent, reliable monthly income. In those types of scenarios, I would just be, a little bit more cautious before you do go all in and have some way of being held, to something where there's no way to get out of it on a monthly basis. If you have an income property that also requires additional out of pocket money every month, you don't have a very stable income to make sure you're going to be able to pay for that. Just, tread lightly, take small steps towards those other income streams.
Yeah. Yeah, the goal and the mindset should be to, create multiple income streams. And I used to be someone that relied on a single income. And when you rely on a single income, you're only one life event, one reduction in hours, one layoff away from potentially a financial crisis. And in America in 2024, things are just difficult right now. Borrowing costs are much higher. Affordability is really being adversely impacted in a lot of our bigger cities. And when I was someone who was on a single source of income, getting to a multiple income stream, it seemed very, very challenging. And sometimes you want to do that, but you don't know where to start and you don't know how to get there. And formally speaking, if you put money in a high yield savings account, let's just say that you put $20,000 in a high yield savings account that's paying 6% interest, 5% interest, you now have another source of income. You will get paid interest on that with virtually, taking virtually no risk. The bank will issue a 1099 at the end of the year, and congratulations, you have an additional source of income. Now, what we're talking about here is, really building out multiple income streams, whether it's through real estate or business ownership, owning stock, getting a dividend payout. There's lots of different ways to do it. And some of those are ways that, we may not have realized, but they are out there. And you also want to plan for when that adversity comes. It's not a question of if. It's not a question of, are you going to face financial challenges in the future. It's a question of, are you going to be prepared when they come, because they're going to happen to every single person. Even just having a kid, starting a family is fantastic, but there are a lot of financial sacrifices that you have to make for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said that perfectly. I don't think I have anything else to add to that one.
All
Very
right,
well
well, let's
said.
move on to number 4 then. Habit number 4: the rich delay gratification versus the poor who seek instant rewards.
Yeah, so this one's fairly similar to the very first point you said, but what I would add to this one is just getting to a point where you almost get some level of excitement from the delayed gratification. Once you've maybe done this a time or two and seen the additional value you get from, instead of buying something today, putting it aside towards something that's more important now. I think once you've been able to do that a time or two and just really understood how valuable that mindset shift can be, then you start to really identify future times like this and can kind of really appreciate them and be excited about doing it, where you're
Mhm.
not, just blowing it and having your having the pocket, burning a hole in your pocket type scenario.
Yeah, I started listening to Scott Galloway a lot, who's a financial influencer, and he's gotten really popular over the last 2 years. And one of the things that he always says is, write down everything that you want. He talks about that, money, freedom, vacations, houses, any other goals that you have. And his message is you can have all that stuff. You just can't have all of it right now. And so if you want that financial freedom, if you want to be able to travel whenever you want, have the second home and do those things, you can, but right now you need to sacrifice and go be great at something. Go learn how to do something exceptionally well, learn how to, provide more value to the marketplace, learn how to work hard. And when you do that, you will be able to have those other things in the future. And so it's the concept of, we can all have everything that we want, but we can't have it right this minute. And when I think of someone who's, really wants that instant gratification, it always has to be right now. It has to be today. But you know what? When you get something right now today, when you get everything you want right now, is there any fulfillment in that? Is it really rewarding? Does it actually mean anything? No, it doesn't mean anything. And there is no reward because it didn't cost you anything. But when you spend 10 years building your business out and you're fighting year after year, and then you get to a place to where it can survive and reproduce on its own, and now you're the beneficiary, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be totally different than someone who wants everything today.
Yeah, I don't want to go down too big of a rabbit hole, but a lot of people that talk about like expensive cars, how it's obviously very exciting and fun, and then you know ask them a month later, and it's kind of just another car at that point. Obviously there's people that have a huge just appreciation for cars, and that's like their thing. I'm sort of one of those people, and that's great. Have that be something that you really aspire to have, but just kind of understanding that, yeah, like you're saying, it's going to kind of go away after a while. And the bigger point that I'd like to make is just understanding also just the value of time.
Yeah.
Just say you have $100,000, and instead of spending it on a luxury vehicle, all of a sudden now you have this extra cushion within your life where instead of working 50 hours a week, you're able to maybe take a Friday off here and there and know that you'll be okay because you have these reserves in your bank account. Just having the ability to really value the time more than the
Hmm.
material possessions. And I think the easiest way to get more time and be comfortable and content with spending that time doing whatever you want is by having this delayed gratification and just putting money away to afford that type of lifestyle.
Yeah, that's the ultimate measure of wealth, is the freedom. And do you have the ability to control your own time and do the things that you want to do and not be dependent on doing something you don't want to do or having a job that you don't want to show up to? And I was having this conversation with my brother earlier this week. With 79% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, what that really means is that they are, living from a place where they have to show up because they're living paycheck to paycheck. And when you live like that, you can't live from a place of supply and creativity. What you're describing there is when you have time. You know what? I'm going to take the Friday off, and I just want to like write out and brainstorm about this new idea that I have. And I want to think about growing my YouTube channel or starting this side hustle. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you simply can't do that. And then that also means that you can't be creative, you can't do these other things. And so it impacts all these other areas of your life. So that's something that really resonates with me and like what I'm learning as I go through this wealth building journey. But I always refer to it of the wealth wheel, and I haven't articulated this yet. This is something that I'm learning to like talk about. And so this is my vision for the wealth wheel. Like you have, there's 12 spokes on the wheel, and each one of those spokes,
It is
spokes,
October. I guess it
e-
spooks this
each
month.
one of those is a different skill. The ability to earn a high income is one spoke. Spending less than you make, paying yourself first, investing in assets that are going to appreciate, learning how to network, learning how to market. Is that making sense? And so there's
Mhm.
all of these skills. And when you can when you can really master six of those skills out of the 12, it really gets that wheel starts to turn pretty fast. If you can master 9, it starts to turn incredibly fast. But for example, you might see someone that has one of those skills. For example, if someone has one of those, earn a high income, but they don't have the other wealth building skills, it doesn't matter, because they're not gonna be able. Their only skill is to earn a high income, and they're not able to grow the wealth because they don't have these other skills in place. And so that was kind of one of my aha moments over the last couple of years, and now I'm very cognizant of my wealth wheel.
That's cool. Only last thing before we move on is the episode that I filmed last week on our podcast. I talk about just this compounding concept of time and just kind of reiterating it on this topic. Everybody has time to pursue additional revenue streams. Just using 1 hour a day as an example, I guarantee you could get up 1 hour early, and after a couple weeks, it's going to feel just like the normal day does right now. But just 1 extra hour a day over a year, that's 365 extra hours you're getting, which equates to an extra month and a half of a 40-hour a week job. So basically, you're getting an extra 6 full 40-hour a week work weeks on just your side hustle, just from that 1 extra hour a day. You do that for a period of 5 years. Now, all of a sudden, that's equivalent to basically an entire year of extra time that you're providing just to the side hustle. So these little small, a little bit of extra effort on a daily, consistent basis can really add up. So I just don't want anybody to continue having that limiting belief excuse of, I don't have time to pursue something.
I know our sponsors are wanting us to get to the break here, but I'm just going to piggyback on that really quick because that is such an awesome point. My book of the year this year is 10x is easier than 2x, written by Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and he talks about that exact thing. Except another point that he makes is that a lot of times you don't have to go, get up the extra hour early. What he talks about is, what are you willing to give up in your life? Like, the hour is already there. What it means is that you have to, what are you willing to give up? So maybe it's, I'm going to go give up the college football game on Saturday that I watch every week. Well, that's 4 hours right there.
Mm-hmm.
What else are you willing to give up? And a lot of times we don't think of it in that way. The time is there, but you're going to have to be willing to give it up.
Perfect, man. Very well said. Well, as you said, the sponsors are definitely anxious to get to the break here. So before we have our sponsored segment, I got a trivia question of the week for everybody. So this is a little bit real estate related. So for the audience that is in real estate, you guys hopefully can get some enjoyment out of this. Which famous world landmark is considered prime real estate and was actually once sold for just $24 worth of beads? Ben, any guesses?
I do have a guess, and I think I might be right. And for the record, he did not tell me what the answer is. I am not looking it up online. I remember this, though, from when I was in third grade. And this is what I think it is. I think it is the sale of Manhattan Island.
I thought you were going to say a joke about Bourbon Street in New Orleans, but yep, you are correct. Manhattan Island. So this guy named Peter Minuit, he actually came over from Holland, and once landing on Manhattan Island, he gathered all the Indians up that were native to that area and actually bought the island with these $24 worth of beads. So it's often considered just the most profitable real estate deal of all time. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. And it's like, is that why, what about space? What about like the moon and all of these other planets out there? And just, think about all of the resources out in space. Do you ever think about, sometimes I find myself thinking about that. And like, if
Yeah.
we're ever, if we're ever going to be like pioneering to all of these other places, like we did when we came to America, I don't know, just something I think about.
I saw some social media posts the other day saying that there was some other planet out there that was twice the size of the moon, I think they said, but it was made completely out of diamond, the diamond type of, rock. So think about how valuable that would be if they could get over there.
I wonder if that was Jared.
That's the name of the planet. Actually, was Jared. Yeah.
Jared's an actual planet. It's not a it's an actual planet out there. Well, let's hear from our sponsors here. Need a real estate team that does more than just close deals? Adam Sells Denver provides expert guidance for buyers, sellers, and investors with personalized strategies tailored to your goals from start to finish. We're your partners in success. Access free resources today at adamsellsdenver.com or simply call or text.
All right, so let's get back to the rest of the episode. We've got 4 more habits that the wealthy are very keen on, and a lot of the poor are not. So, Ben, let's jump into habit number 5.
All right, habit number 5. The rich build networks and the poor, the rich build networks and relationships versus the poor who have limited networking. This one's so important because I think folks that don't understand how powerful relationships and networking are, this is something that's very easy to dismiss.
Mm-hmm.
Can you relate to this? Just from like, do you believe in networking and relationships, and what kind of impact has that had on you personally in your career?
Yeah, 110%. I'd say since I became friends with you, I've probably gained 3 or 4 times the wealth that I've had prior to this. So definitely it's all about surrounding yourself with the right people. But no, jokes aside, I would also add to that we did a previous episode on the Pareto principle, which is also known as the 80-20 rule. And kind of a spinoff of that, they talk about you surround yourself with the 5 people that you surround yourself with. If you take all of their annual income that they're making each individually, and you divide that by 5, the 5 people that you surround yourself with, whatever that dollar amount is usually within about 5% of what your annual income is. It's almost like a magic trick. So just really understanding that the more you elevate the circles that you're in and really focus more on how can you provide value to others to get yourself in those other circles, just with that hopefully comes, additional wealth, and not just the wealth, but I would say more importantly, just the education and the strategies and the experiences that those other people that you're now surrounding yourself with, learning from their mistakes and being able to accelerate getting to that same place that they were in less time because you're not making the same mistakes that they did.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And what this really comes down to, this habit number 5, is being an excellent communicator, learning how to communicate in a responsible, respectful, powerful way. I'm constantly reading communication books. Right now, I'm reading a book called Nonviolent Communication. And the reason for that is because if you become a better communicator, well, think of all of the different areas of your life that are going to benefit. Your relationship with your family is going to benefit, with your friends, with your coworkers, with your kids, with your referral partners. Every area of your life, if you become a better communicator, is going to profit. When and I also put this label on myself because I used to believe, because I had a poor attitude in regards to this, that being an excellent communicator or being social was something you were either born with or you weren't. And for the longest time, I believed that I was not a great communicator. I just wasn't that social. I am very introverted. I call myself a social introvert now, but not realizing that this is a skill that you can develop. When I first started going to network events, I would pull up to the events and I would just turn off the car after I parked and kind of just close my
Oh my
eyes
god.
and like make, just dreading having to walk in the door and go socialize. I mean, I was so full of fear, and I'm out in the parking lot having a panic attack almost. And people just, the whole point is just to like have some conversation and like make some connections. And I made it way too big of a deal. And what I learned is that communication is fun. Learning how to become a better communicator is very fulfilling. It's a skill. And when you get better at a skill and you get more proficient, it's very fulfilling.
Yep. Yep. I've been there as well. And I think a lot of our audience has too. So it's one of those things, man. You just gotta, I think, get the reps in, and you lose it if you don't continue to, put yourself out there and network and just, make that a priority. Especially, I think, after COVID and just how reclusive everybody became because of that. It's been a challenge to get back into that type of attitude with myself. I'm speaking of myself personally, but
Mhm.
something I'm working on too. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one. So
All
what's
right,
number
habit number
six?
6. The poor value health and well-being versus the rich value health and well-being versus the poor who neglect self-care. Now, on top of that, I want to share a couple of statistics, and I want you to tell me or our audience if you believe there is any correlation between these two. One of them I already shared. So, 79% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck or have less than a $2,000 emergency fund saved. That's statistic number one. 74% of Americans, and this is according to the CDC, 74% of Americans are considered adult Americans are considered overweight. 79% live paycheck to paycheck. 74%, according to the CDC, are overweight.
Yeah, man. If you want to be fat, have a fat paycheck. You got to switch your mindset here. It's crazy how many people I think kind of fall down one of those paths, and then it applies to other areas of their life. So they stop maybe working out and exercising, and then that also then translates to clocking out at 4:59 and just doing the bare minimum
Yeah.
versus getting into an active healthy lifestyle routine, going to the gym in the morning, feeling more healthy and energetic, and sticking around till 6 because you have that extra boost of just inspiration or just motivation. So I think there's definitely it plays hand in hand. It's not just one thing or the other. It really does either both benefit and help each other out, or could also really tank on both sides if you don't really follow these correctly.
Yeah, and there's so many different components of valuing health and well-being, and I'll just share some of the things that I do and some of the examples that I lead my life by. And I used to be someone that exercised occasionally. I've always enjoyed exercise and being active, but now, I went from being someone who exercised occasionally to exercising daily. I'm in the gym with you every morning, weight training. And now I exercise twice a day. I weight train in the morning and I run in the evening. I like to know that I'm physically fit. I like to know that I'm in good health. I like to be, have toned muscles. I feel good about myself. When I don't go to the gym, even if it's been 2 or 3 days, I don't feel quite as sharp. I don't feel as strong. And that starts to kind of just mentally mess with my head. So it's not just the physical part, it's also the mental part. I'm also very intentional with my wellness though. I go and get my physical annually every year with my doctor. I get my blood panel done. So I'm looking at my blood every single year. I want to know exactly where I'm at. I make sure to go to the dentist. I even got Invisalign last year, and it wasn't because I was concerned with my smile. It was because I was concerned with my dental health. Not today, but 20 years down the road, because I knew if I didn't correct that, because I stopped wearing my retainers when I was a teenager, if I didn't correct that, I would potentially be setting myself up 10, 15, 20 years from now for some probably pretty serious dental concerns. And so I wanted to get that corrected now. And so it's learning to really value it. And it also goes in line with that long-term gratification. I'm not doing that for today. I'm doing that for 10, 15, 20 years from now. The when we stay in shape today, it's not necessarily for today. I want to live a healthy life and lifestyle when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old. I've told you I'm planning on living to 140.
I saw something the other day from Rob Dyrdek where his goal is to live 1 million hours, which means that he would live to like 114. I thought that was kind of a cool just way to break it down. But no, I agree 100% on this entire specific point here. And all I'll close out this one with is just the adage or the phrase, health is wealth. That's
Yeah.
simply put as that. Let's go
Yep.
talk about number 7. What's number 7?
Habit number 7, the rich practice frugality versus the poor who spend beyond their means. Agree or disagree?
So Warren Buffett is always in the top 10 wealthiest people on the planet. And tell me about his house. Tell me about his lifestyle.
Yeah, well, Warren Buffett still lives in the same home in 2024 that he did in the 1950s. And I can't remember the exact price that he paid for it, but I believe it was $30,000. Guess what kind of car he drives?
Toyota Camry or something? I forgot.
He drives a mid-level Cadillac sedan. Not even like a high end, just like a mid-level, just, 30, $40,000 car.
I think when you're at that point, maybe splurge a little bit, but at the same time, it is pretty cool just to see, somebody at that level still
Well,
practicing that
he
frugality.
did remodel his kitchen, and this was like headline news. He did remodel the kitchen back in 2000, which at the time the home was like 40 years old, and so that was his big upgrade.
You put it at a garbage disposal. That was his 30th wedding anniversary to his wife.
Yeah, but what can we learn from that? And I also read Jeff Bezos's biography as well, and the Starbucks CEO. I've listened to him speak. All of these guys have very similar themes and how they live their life. Sam Walton, same thing. They are all very, very frugal. Now, your average American or your average American consumer doesn't understand that because they look at the Jeff Bezos, who's you know the second richest man in the world that has a net worth of 250 billion, and they see him on his super yacht. That's the Jeff Bezos they're looking at today. They're not looking at the Jeff Bezos from 1994 who lived and worked out of his garage for 15 years and had one nice shirt, one coffee mug, and did not live an extravagant lifestyle. Warren Buffett is still that same way,
Mm-hmm.
because if the money you're bringing in is going out to things that don't matter, and you're spending on luxury items, like all of these guys invest back into the business. It's so much easier to win when you don't have all these additional payments. If you don't have the 5 or 6 cars, if you have to make 5 or 6 car loan payments every month while you're trying to build a business or a career, I mean, that's going to be really, really difficult.
The only thing I'll add to that one is just, my biggest role model is my dad, who's, been very successful over his career and life. And just looking at his just outlook on how he does things to even still today, where, if a toilet gets clogged or a sink is leaking, he's doing it himself. He's taking the action just to do things versus by being frugal. Just rather than spending $300 for a plumber to come out, he tries to fix it himself, and just obviously that's just one small kind of maybe irrelevant example, but having that same attitude that is applied towards every aspect of his life. And because of that, he can still, treat the family on nice vacations and do different things, but only because he's had that very frugal mindset for the last 30 or 40 years. And it's really just ingrained him into who he is today with, just how he lives his life. And I think a lot of very successful people in some regard are similar to that.
Yeah, that's such a great example, and I've always had tremendous respect for your dad as well. Just the decisions that he's made and how he has put him in position to really, he gets to choose what he values. And so what you're saying is that he still has that frugal mindset, but there's also things that he's willing to spend money on because he values those things, and because he has been disciplined and he has been frugal, he gets to choose what those things are. The things that he values, he doesn't mind spending money on, but he's not going to go spend a lot of money on things that he doesn't value. And he's learned to develop these skills where he is a handy. He knows how to identify problems. And if there is an issue or something comes up, he's not afraid to spend money on it if it's going to protect an asset or if it's going to put him in a better position. And that's a great example.
Yep. Let's close out this episode with number 8, buddy. Let's saving the best for last. What's number 8?
Saving the best for last. And keep in mind that this is only the first half. So this is the last of the first half. We got the second half, 9 through 15, coming up next week. Habit number 8: the rich take calculated risks versus the poor who avoid risks.
Yep, that is a very, very, very true statement. I think wealth always comes just from taking those well thought out risks. Risks can be really put into different buckets. There's calculated risks, but also there's just kind of taking risks for no reason. I think the wealthy understand this, and probably through trial and error and making mistakes prior to earlier in their life, just learning from their mistakes, understanding how to calculate those risks, but just really, always having a level mind on assessing everything that comes up and making those calculated risks. People that are super wealthy often get asked, how did you make all that money? Were you just lucky? Luck is always a word that gets brought up when it comes to a lot of wealthy people. And, oh, you just got lucky. What they don't see is the calculated risks that they had taken 8 times prior to the one that hit big,
Yeah.
and just understanding that risk is a very controversial maybe topic. Some people see risk as a negative, but really taking risk and doing it the right way, I think, is really the only way that you're going to ever do something great and just extraordinary, because it's going to take stepping outside of the box to make that happen.
Yeah, and one thing that I always say is that there are a lot of really successful people that do acknowledge, that luck played a factor in their success. But what I always say is you have to put yourself in position to be able to take advantage of luck, or you have to recognize what luck looks like. And that's the problem. Most people can't even identify what the opportunity is. The opportunity is right there in front of them, but they don't have the skills, the mindset. They haven't developed themselves enough to even be able to recognize what the opportunity is. Let me share a personal story really quick. When I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and this is right after the housing crash back in 2010, I had just bought my first home for $130,000, and at the time, Phoenix had just gotten crushed by foreclosures. Values had come down over 50%, and in the little subdivision that I lived in, every other home, and I'm not kidding, every other home in that subdivision was for sale. It was a foreclosure or a short sale or a distressed property. And there were homes for sale, literally 30,000. And these were homes that were built 2 or 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years prior. 30,000, 50,000, 40,000. And I'm talking big homes, 2,000s, 2,000, 2,500, 2 stories. And I would always, my son was a baby at the time. I'd put him in the baby stroller and I would just walk down the block. I was like, how can you go wrong buying a house for less than what you could purchase a new car for? And then I would pull out my wallet and I would say, this credit card right here has a higher limit than that home that's for sale right there. But I was afraid. Even though I recognized the opportunity, I didn't have the confidence at the time to act because I was afraid of the risk. And I was like, well, this is a really bad time to buy. There's foreclosure. I got consumed, even though, I always look back on that. I was like, what if I had just, I could have bought 10 homes for 300,000 in that neighborhood. And I am not exaggerating. Can you imagine that?
No, that's a lot of people made a lot of money during that time, but majority, 99% of the people, lived out of a state of fear, and it is what it is. But yeah, it's crazy, dude.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's.
Yeah, guys. So just before we close out the episode, if you guys, as always, have any feedback, any questions, anything at all, shout out you want to give us on social media. We'd love for you guys to submit any questions or any just maybe ideas for future Q&A episodes. So you can always do that by just shooting either of us a direct message on social media, or you guys can also just leave a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube today, just leave a comment in the show notes down below.
All right. Well,
All right.
that is a wrap. And until next week.
Yep. You guys, that wraps it up. Just once more though, before we close out, just really understanding that, on the next episode, we're going to dive into the remaining, I guess the remaining 7 out of these 15 habits. And we're going to just help you guys keep this financial freedom mindset, and more importantly, just how you can start making changes right now. So just make sure you guys tune in for part 2 next week. And until then, have a great rest of your day. We'll see you later.
Love you guys. Benjamin Adams for Adam Lang. This is the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Until next time.
Love you. Damn, that's a good one. I don't even want to change my shirt, dude. I'm just going to wear this again.
I'm going to reverse my hat.
There you go. You kept.
I thought it flowed really well. Didn't you think it flowed well?
Yeah, that was good. You froze a couple times. Was I freezing at all, or?
Yeah, you were.
You were still talking when it unfroze, which is good, but
it wasn't long. But it was. There was probably like a couple times where it froze.
That's why I'm just like paranoid about having guests on, especially people that we don't necessarily know that well. Like, I really want to get that figured out before that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, I'm going to, let's see here. Just to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to
I'm gonna
exit
go grab a
out and
water
then I'm
really
going to
quick.
open up the studio again. That way the two episodes are separate from one another. Did you hear that? I'm going to exit out of the studio completely for all of us and then just log back in. That way it separates the two podcasts from each other.